Good morning, Glenwood Ridge. This morning we're going to talk about Family Education Rights Privacy Act, also known as FERPA. FERPA is a federal law that protects privacy of student education records maintained by or on behalf of educational agencies or institutions. FERPA gives parents and students 18 and older the right to prevent the disclosure of personal identifiable information from their education records without consent. It also gives them the right to access to review and inspect student education records and to request correction of these education records. Education records can include anything directly related to the student that is maintained by the school, such as the student's name and address of family members, social security number, student number, personal characteristics or info that would make the student's identity easily traceable, and indirect information such as the place, the date of birth, and the mother's maiden name. Education records do not include notes made by the teacher for private use, law enforcement or campus security records. If the surveillance footage is kept by the school, it becomes education record. It also does not include employment records, alumni records, or grades on peer graded assignments. Directory information under FERPA, schools may disclose directory information without consent, but they are required to allow parents and eligible students a reasonable amount of time to request that the school does not disclose directory information about them. Directory information can include student's name, address, telephone listing, email address, photograph, date and place of birth, grade level, enrollment status, participation in activities or athletics, their weight and height for athletics, dates of attendance, honors and awards, and their most recent school attended. FERPA allows educators to share information about a student internally within the institution or school district with basically any employee or agent who has a job that gives them a need to have access to certain information about a student. Those who can access education records include parents, students 18 and older, school officials who have legitimate need, officials of other schools to which the student is being transferred. State education agencies may disclose student scores to other schools within the state that the student intends to enroll. And contractors, consultants, and other parties to whom a state educational agency has outsourced services and for financial aid purposes. FERPA permits schools and districts to disclose education records without appropriate consent to school officials. School officials include teachers, principals, the superintendent, district administration, board members, the register, counselor, and human resources. FERPA permits school districts to disclose student information in compliance with a judicial order or lawfully issued subpoena, in connection with a health or safety emergency, or in connection with a student engaged in a crime. How to ensure that our school is FERPA compliant? We can raise FERPA awareness. All staff must understand the laws and rights, which is the purpose of this training. Choose compliant vendors. Under FERPA, schools are responsible for what vendors do with the data, so we need to choose vendors that are compliant to FERPA. Implement policies and procedures that comply. For example, shredding old papers, encrypt files and emails. Be diligent on social media, and an inappropriate disclosure to even one person on social media is a FERPA violation. How does FERPA impact my classroom? Be careful with the technology you use in your lessons. Don't use websites that require students to enter personal information unless it has been approved by a supervisor or your school's technology officer. Find out what companies or vendors your school is working with or feels comfortable working with, and evaluate the technology you and your students use. It also impacts your classroom. Keep any student data you have secure. Store your students' data and information using your school's data management systems. Don't email information to unverified parent email addresses. Be sure you're not accidentally accidentally disclosing information to the wrong person. Keep any physical graded materials or grade books in secure, safe places. And don't discuss student information with others unless that person has a legitimate educational goal. If they don't work with the student, then they don't have reason to know. Responding to requests to access student information. You may communicate education record information with students' parents. Be sure your student's legal guardians under FERPA parent includes a natural parent, a guardian, or an individual acting as a parent in the absence of a parent or guardian. If you ever receive a request to inspect or review education records you do not have access to, tell your administrator. In modern education, digital record keeping has replaced traditional paper files. Classroom assignments and assessments are often delivered online via laptops or tablets. Teachers use social media platforms, websites, and free apps in class, and many operational functions historically performed by schools are now outsourced remotely to contractors. Compliance through modern education concerns. As far as with surveillance cameras, according to the National Center for Education Statistics, more than 80% of public schools and more than 94% of high schools in the U.S. use security cameras to monitor students. When using surveillance cameras under the current law, companies providing surveillance cameras and software for a school must abide by the same laws a school lives by when it comes to protecting student data. Also notify the school community through policy statements and in handbooks and signage that cameras are located throughout school property and individuals should anticipate having their images captured. Outside vendors and electronic data. Data destruction is the process of removing information in a way that renders it unreadable for paper records or irretrievable for digital records. For very low risk information, this may mean simply deleting electronic files or using a desk shredder for paper documents. However, these types of destruction methods can be undone by a determined and motivated individual, making these methods inappropriate for more sensitive data. To remain FERPA compliant, FERPA requires that schools maintain direct control over the authorized recipient's maintenance and use of personal identifiable information from education records. It is best practice for schools to require vendors to destroy personal identifiable information when no longer needed. And permanent and irreversible destruction of data is a cornerstone of protecting the privacy and security of student education records. Data destruction encompasses a wide variety of media, including electronic and paper records. If the department finds that an educational agency or institution has violated FERPA, the department will work with the educational agency or institution to bring it into compliance. Only in those instances where an educational agency or institution is unwilling or unable to come into voluntary compliance with the law and it is otherwise appropriate will the department withhold federal funds. Here are my references, and thank you everybody for watching.